And if you were here last week, you would have heard the first couple of chapters from the great story of Joseph. But if you weren't here, then let's just do a quick recap. Because Joseph's a fascinating story. It's like a novel in the Bible, and 13 chapters of fascination. And there's so much in it, I can't possibly cover all the nuances in any one or two sermons. But we can get some of the essence of it. We can get some of what it's about. And last week we talked about how he was gifted, but a little bit foolhardy, and suffered reverse as a result of that. And he was put in the pit. He was sold into slavery. He was accused. And then he ended up in prison. That's where we ended last week, right? He's in prison. And so it's got to get better, doesn't it? We have 11 chapters to make it get better. But in all sincerity, it is already better, because no matter what happened to him, he always responded with trust and expansiveness and with possibility thinking, right? So this is our truth in unity, isn't it? It's not what happens to you, right? It's how you respond to it, right? And so Joseph is a template for that. His name in the ancient Hebrew means he who increases, he who expands. And there's a key right there to the consciousness we need if we're going to be successful. We always have to be expansive, right? Not contracting, not worrying, not fretful, but open to new ideas, new understanding. And of course, he was a dreamer, so he had the gift of imagination. He could see beyond what appears to be into a larger realm of the subconscious mind, which is directly linked to superconscious mind, to God, right? So dreams are like a messenger service to give us new information. So he was open to that. And then all through the story, he keeps saying, I trust in God. It's not me that interprets the dreams, it's God. God will provide an interpretation. Sometimes when we got gifts, guess what? We think it's all about us, don't we? We think we are so cool, so hot. It's not about us. We are just channels to let that gift express, right? So we have to humble ourselves. This is a key to success. The most humble people are the ones that truly are aligned with spirit and succeed in their lives. Now, why are we studying Joseph? Because it's a template for all of us to live our lives, right? That's why we look at the Bible metaphysically. What's there for us? What's it mean in our particular lives? So are we ready to jump into the rest of it, yeah? Yes. All right, let's do it. Next, he's in prison, and into the prison comes the royal cupbearer and the royal baker. The Pharaoh they've fallen out of favor with the Pharaoh, and he's thrown them into prison. Now, these people were very important, right? Because the cupbearer was the one in charge of the wine and all the drinks. I don't know what kind of drinks they had, but they had plenty of drinks. It was the Pharaoh, man. They had plenty of food as well, but they had to make sure that the food wasn't tainted and the wine wasn't poisoned, right? So they big role. I hear Putin actually has many cupbearers and bakers protecting his food. And I'm sure that's true of our leaders here as well. There's somebody that checks the food before they eat because they don't want to be poisoned. Big problem, even today. So they come in and they've both had dreams. And so they want to share their dream. Nobody can interpret the dreams, but Joseph said, I think I can help. I think God is going to speak through and give you an interpretation. So here's the dreams. We've each had a dream, and there's no one to interpret them. Joseph said to them, all interpretation belongs to God. There's the key, right? God first. God first. All interpretation belongs to God. Do you ever go around in your life with that first in your mind? Often we don't. We got other things. We got other agendas. But imagine if everything we did, God first. That would be transformative. And then he says, well, why not tell me your dreams? So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, there was a vine in front of me, which is appropriate for a cupbearer. On the vine there were 3 branches, and as soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. I plucked the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, which I was holding, and then put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will raise your head and restore you to your post. Then you will put the cup into Pharaoh's hand, as you used to do when you were his cupbearer." Good interpretation, good outcome, right? Then the baker came up and he said, "Interpret my dream. I too had a dream. And in my dream, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket, there was every kind of food, such as a baker might prepare for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating out of the top basket on my head." Good or bad? Bad, probably, because the good was being consumed by the birds, right? Joseph said, "This is the interpretation. 3 baskets of 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will raise your head off your shoulders and hang you on a tree, and the birds of the air will devour the flesh of your bones." And it came to pass, because Pharaoh brought the cupbearer back and exalted him, and the baker not so much. He impaled him, killed him, chopped off his head, did all kinds of things to him. Sometimes you win in life. Sometimes you don't. But the message here is that, you have to wisely discern what is the truth, right? And in your own head, if we're Joseph consciousness, you get lots of information coming at you, and you have to wisely discern it. Some is good, some is bad. And you have to say what to the bad, no, and yes to the good. That's my understanding of what this is about, right? If you're going to be successful, you can't hedge your bets. You've got to be determined to follow a certain path. Joseph says to the cupbearer, "Remember me. If you found good, tell the Pharaoh about it. Maybe he'll help me get out of this prison." So what happens? Cupbearer goes back to Pharaoh, completely forgets about Joseph, right, for 2 years. And this tells you something about life too, doesn't it? That sometimes doesn't always work out the way you want. It would have been nice if he'd gone straight back to Pharaoh and said, "Come on, get this guy out of here. He's a good guy." No, another 2 years. All in all, he was in slavery for about 13 years. Long time. What does that tell you in your own life story? We enslave ourselves. Don't give up, because sometimes it doesn't work at the right particular time that you want it, right? You have to persevere. You have to be patient, confident that there is going to be something good that's eventually going to come out. Well, 2 years later, the Pharaoh has a dream, and he can't interpret it. And then the cupbearer remembers, wait a minute, there's this guy in prison. And he says the good things about my dream. I like this guy. You might want to talk to him, right? You never know when your good is going to come. There's no such thing as a coincidence, right? That these elements come into our lives, good or bad, and there's something good can come from them, good and bad. We have to pay attention and be patient and wait for the thing to blossom in our lives. So here's the dream that Pharaoh had. And we don't probably know this one because it's kind of a children's story. We all know this famous dream, right? And I remember reading it or listening to it for the first time when I was about 5 or 6 in school, or Bible school, whatever it was. And being fascinated with this one because the image was so startling. Well, here it is. He was standing by the Nile, says Pharaoh, when there came up from the river 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. And you could picture this, the big fat cows, beautiful. Presently, 7 other cows, gaunt and lean, came up from the river and stood beside the cows on the riverbank. And I could see the image, right? These thin, emaciated bones sticking out, the whole thing. The cows that were gaunt and lean devoured the 7 fat and sleek cows. And then Pharaoh woke up. Whoa, what kind of a dream is this? And then he dreamed again. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. He saw 7 ears of corn, full and ripe, growing on a single stalk. Springing up after them, there were 7 other ears, thin and shriveled by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 ears that were full and plump. Then Pharaoh woke and found it was a dream. Oh my God, what kind of a dream, right? I often have these kind of dreams. I don't know if you do. Anxious dreams. Sometimes I can't escape. My legs won't work properly. The car breaks down. The person doesn't show up. Something's, you're trying to fix something and it doesn't work. The bad overwhelms you, right? What is it about that? There's something about dealing with reverse in our dreams. But we have to deal with reverse in life too, right? Have you ever had your sleek cows devoured by thin, measly little half-dead cows, metaphysically speaking? I know there's no little cow in your house right now that's going, but what could that represent? Help me here. And we could wait a while, it's okay. Loss of job. Yeah, exactly. Life's going along great, right? I've got some sleek cows here, and I'm feeling good about this. And then this reverse comes seemingly out of the blue, right? And the thing that seems to have no power, this half-dead thing, is taking over everything. I lose confidence. I let things overwhelm me. I get addicted. I give in to fear. I'm almost giving in to fear right now, where we are in the nation. So thank you for America the Beautiful. Remember, we're all in this together, right? I'll be so glad. I'm scared that it's coming, but I'm glad when it's passed. No, I'm talking about November 5th. I'm not getting political one way or the other. It's just we're in a very fraught situation at the moment. One of the most momentous elections of our lifetime, right? I can't think of another one, maybe one more back in the day. So it can overwhelm us. Sometimes those little thin, measly cows of fear can overtake us. Easy to happen. What's the interpretation that Joseph gives? He says, yeah, go ahead. Famine, yeah. He said there's going to be 7 great years where you're all going to have plenty of cattle and grain, but it's going to be followed by 7 years of famine. And get used to it, folks. This is life, isn't it? Sometimes it's like that, And we have to thank our lucky stars when each day is filled with grace and not a problem, because there comes a time when, problems will come. But it's how we deal with them. And Joseph says, okay, it means, there's going to be 7 good years, 7 bad years. But guess what? I got a plan. And the plan is harvest, right? For those 7 years, store away the good so that you will have that good for a future time, right? Now, what does it mean to store away? Because let's look at this metaphysically in consciousness. What are we doing? See, it's easy to be a fair weather friend with this stuff, right? But we have to build a stockpile within consciousness so that when there are reverses, we're not overwhelmed, that we have that centeredness. That's why I love that affirmation. I am centered and poised in the Christ Spirit. So no matter what comes, I remember that that's the truth of me. I'm putting that in my storehouse. That's my storehouse of consciousness. So I remember in dark times that I am not the situation I'm in. I am a Christed being. I am filled with all possibility. Yeah? Very important to do that. If you don't build up that stockpile, it's easy to be overwhelmed. So that's one interpretation. The other interpretation is literal. It was the good stewardship. We have to be good stewards of our resources, right? To use them wisely and well. Don't go blow it. How many people have won the lottery and they've lost everything within a year? You always read these stories. Why does that happen, do you think? They made millions and it's all gone. Well, sometimes they give away money to people who come at them and say, hey, can you help me out here? They don't lively steward it, but also they're not prepared. They're not prepared to deal with that shift in their lives, right? They're used to being limited in some way. And now they've got limitless resources, but they haven't got the consciousness to deal with it. So you have to build that consciousness so that it doesn't overwhelm you when it happens. Even good things can disappear because we are not ready to receive them. And that's the thing we have to ask in our church right now, right? Where we are, because you're in a transition time between ministers. I've seen a drop in the attendance here in recent times. When I came in the early part of the year, there's many more people. There's a tendency to sort of just go along with everything and not really pay attention. So you're going to have to ask yourselves, and I know you are, ask yourselves, what is it that's going to really sustain this church? Maybe there's a whole new thinking about the way we do church. Maybe it's not just Sunday morning anymore. There's alternative ways of presenting ministry. You're on the Greenville Avenue. There's millions of people that come and go up and down here, people with needs. There may be other things that this church could provide that's out-of-the-box thinking, right? That will attract younger folk, because you're going to need more younger folk to survive, to thrive. Just throw that out as thought, because we have to think outside the box. We have to think expansion, trust, but imagination, to imagine something beyond what we have now, right? Always think bigger. Nobody else could work this out except Joseph. And so they gave him, Pharaoh said, I'm going to make you the second in command. You're going to be the vice president. You're going to have everything you need to bring forth this dream that you have. And that's an incredible exaltation, right? How did he get so lucky? What's that about? He goes from being in slavery and in prison, now he's second in command. Huh? Is that realistic? You are always in command of your life, folks. No matter how bad it gets. And when you realize that, and you accept that, and you be creative with it, then things begin to flow to you, right? You begin to do remarkable things. When I first came to my church back in Fort Worth, there were about 30 people on Sunday, and it was viable, but we grew it to over 500 because we kept the faith. It didn't happen overnight, but it was a dream that we all had and shared, and shows that anything is possible, right? So it's that expansive attitude. He's second in command. The 7 years are over. The famine has come. Not just to Egypt, but also to Israel. And his brothers and Jacob, his dad, are also feeling the famine in their own country. And they say, hey, wait a minute. We've heard there's this fabulous plan down there in Egypt where they got plenty of food. We better go down and see if we can get some. So Jacob, dad, sends his sons, everyone except Benjamin, because Benjamin is his other favorite son. He's lost Joseph, he thinks, and he doesn't want to lose Benjamin, so he keeps him back, sends the other 10 kids down to ask for food. They take silver with them, and they arrive, and they see Joseph. Of course, they don't recognize it's Joseph. He has become Egyptificated. I don't think there's such a word, but anyway. He's become Egyptified. He's walking like an Egyptian now, you know what I'm saying? He's got the special helmet and all that. And now, he was 17 when they last saw him. Guess how, yeah, there you go. Guess how old he is now? He's 30. So it's been 13 years of growing. So, and he's probably just looking totally different. They're not expecting it to be Joseph, and they don't recognize him. But he recognizes them because why not? They're still dressed like they always were. And he immediately sees that, oh my God, this is my brothers. Well, he doesn't tell them though. He keeps it secret because he doesn't want to, it's a little dance that goes on for about 3 or 4 chapters. He doesn't want it to go wrong. He wants the reconciliation to be done in the right way. Because, hey, they wanted to kill him. They threw him in a pit. They sold him into slavery. He's not going to immediately go, hey, buds, it's great to see you. You're not going to do that. There's a certain period of testing, right? Well, his first test, he says, nice, but I think you're spies. I don't, no, and they go, no, we're not spies. But he doesn't trust them, or he purports not to trust them, right? We're testing. It's called tough love, isn't it? You don't immediately forgive and go forward without some testing here of motivation. And that motivation is out there in people we know, but it's also in here. We have to ask the inner brothers, the inner committee within our own being, if they are genuine, right? Because we can be fooled. We can be fooled by certain aspects of ourselves that say they're going to do a good thing. They're, oh yeah, I'm going to follow Spirit. I'm going to come up into the light. Yeah, I don't think so. They go back to their ways, their greedy, selfish ways very quickly. So we have to do some discernment here. So, like I said, the first time he calls them spies, and he says, you can go back and take your grain, but you've got to leave somebody. So they leave Simeon with Joseph. When they go back to Israel, they open their bags full of grain. They also found the silver that they'd given to pay for the grain. Joseph had made his servants put the silver in the bags. Now, they sold him into slavery and got silver. So now he's telling a little tale here, isn't he? He's saying, hey, you can have your silver back. So it's a wake-up call here, you know. I don't need your silver. But they're shocked because it's supposed to be a good transaction, and he's not fulfilling that. So they're afraid. They run out of the grain, come for the second visit. And by the way, each time Joseph has to go into a side room and weep for a while because he's so upset. He wants to reconcile, but he knows it's not quite the right time. And he keeps asking him another question. Is your father still alive? Because he desperately wants to see his dad again. Now this time, he creates a feast for and he asked them, I forgot this bit, he asked them to bring Benjamin back, and there's a big argument with Dad, because Dad wanted to let him go, but they eventually said, it's not going to work out for us if we don't let Benjamin go. So they let Benjamin come with them, and when Joseph sees Benjamin, he's overwhelmed, because this is his brother, not his half-brother, this is his brother, and he's in love with the idea of reconciliation, but again, he can't do it quite yet. So they have a feast, and he sends them on their way. This time he gets a silver cup, which he uses for divination, and puts it in Benjamin's sack on the donkey. And when they leave, he sends some of the servants of Pharaoh out to stop them and says, open your bags. And there's a silver cup. And he goes, I accuse you of stealing this cup. Why? Why? Another test, isn't it? It's another test. And they rush back and say, oh no, we didn't do this. Believe us. We're on the level here, right? So he's getting them to get right with themselves before there's reconciliation. This time, Judah offers to stay, and that's important because Judah was the one that wanted him killed and sold him into slavery. So now, instead of Judah being the one in authority, it is Joseph. And by the way, every time they come to see Joseph, they bow down. Do you remember the dream that he shared when he was young? He had the brothers bowing down. They didn't like him for it, but now they're doing it. What goes around comes around, right? Joseph can't bear it anymore. He reveals himself. And let me read this bit, because it's good. Joseph was no longer able to control his feelings in front of all his attendants, and he said, let everyone leave my presence. There was nobody present when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. But he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and news of it got to Pharaoh's household. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Can my father be still alive? They were so dumbfounded at finding themselves face to face with Joseph that he couldn't answer. Well, imagine yourself. Finally, you realize, oh my God, this guy, my overseer, the great king here, the next one under the great Pharaoh, is my brother. Oh, going to be a shock, isn't it? He couldn't say anything. Joseph said to them, "Come closer to me." And when they did so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be," now this is a kicker, because it's so easy to want revenge, isn't it? He says, "Now do not be distressed or blame yourselves for selling me into slavery here." This is the expansiveness of the spiritual consciousness. Do not be distressed or blame yourself for selling me into slavery here. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Wow. For there have now been 2 years of famine in the land, and there will be another 5 years with neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me on ahead of you to ensure that you will have descendants on earth and to preserve for you a host of survivors. It is clear that it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me Pharaoh's chief counselor, lord of over his whole household, and ruler of all Egypt. Wow. Powerful stuff, isn't it? It's so easy to say, "I want revenge, you sons of guns. I'm going to get my own back on you." Could have had them all killed, but that wasn't the expansive way, was it? The expansive way was reconciliation, but in the right time, in the right way, right? So then we have greater good. So again, it's saying, listen, this was all meant for a purpose. Can you say that through all the interesting, crazy, joyous, and terrifying events of your life? Can you say this has all been for a higher purpose? That's a hard one, isn't it? But until we can see that every single thing brought us to where we are today, then we'll never be free, right? Because we'll always be holding on to that sense of, ain't it awful? Why did this happen? It's bad. Nothing's good's going to come from this, etc., etc. But the minute you can say, yes, I wholeheartedly welcome everything that happened. I was actually on the way over here today, and I had one of the flashback. I had a flashback. You know, in my age, you have these flashbacks. And in my generation, anyway, it wasn't that kind of flashback, but the flashback was when I was 13 or something, and I did something stupid. And I thought, you are an idiot, Paul. You know, I was telling myself this. And I thought, no, you're not. It's just, you're like everybody else. We all screwed up different ways. Don't beat up on yourself. But isn't it amazing? And that's like 68 years. Well, no, I'm not that old. It was 59 years ago. You know, it was, here it comes again. But it comes to revisit you to say, are you really expansive enough to embrace that and let it go? Right? And when you can, wow, it's freeing. It's wonderful. Oh my God, we're going on, aren't we? We don't have a potluck, so we're okay. We can keep going. I hope there's not a potluck. Is there a potluck today? No. All right, let's wrap up here. So there's the reconciliation. Jacob comes, and of course they all fall on each other and embrace and laugh and weep and laugh, because that's part of what reconciliation is, yeah? And then as Joseph, I think, was 143 when he died. Not bad, 143. Interesting side note, Jacob knew his beloved son Joseph for 17 years before he went into slavery, and he thought he was dead. And then when they were reconciled, Jacob lived, guess how many more years before he died, and got to hang out with Joseph? 17. Interesting. So it's 17 and 17, and then there's craziness in the middle, right? Just a side note, but it's kind of interesting. Jacob blesses all the brothers, but I want to read the one where he blesses Joseph, because I think the poetry is so beautiful. Joseph, and again, imagine yourself, you are Joseph, right? You are that consciousness of expansion, of imagination, of trusting God. Joseph is a fruitful tree by a spring, whose branches climb over the wall. The archers savagely attacked him. shooting and assailing him fiercely, but Joseph's bow remained unfailing and his arms were tireless. By the power of the strong one of Jacob, by the name of the shepherd of Israel, by the God of your father, so may he help you. By God Almighty, so may he bless you with the blessing of heaven above and the blessings of the deep that lies below. The blessings of breast and womb and the blessings of your father are stronger than the blessings of the eternal mountains and the bounty of the everlasting hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of him who was prince among his brothers. Beautiful, isn't it? This is the blessing that we all receive when we remember the truth of our being. We are a fruitful bough. And I love that image, the branches climbing over the wall, you know. There's so much good, it can't be contained within the garden. It's going out. It's being a blessing into the wider world. Well, Jacob dies, and the brothers are still doubting. They thought they were going to be protected, just like Frida was protected in The Godfather, right? But then they still were fearful that he's going to get whacked. They're going to get whacked. And so, there's this little final beautiful end to the story. Now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers were afraid, for they said, and isn't that true in life? You know, it's like that 13-year-old coming after me this morning. It's like there's always fear. There's always that sense of no matter what, no matter all the good that's happened, we still think, well, maybe he's going to get me. Maybe it's not going to work out the way it should. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What if Joseph should bear a grudge against us? Are you kidding me after all what he's done? But we're still hanging out in that. What if he should bear a grudge against me and pay us back for all the harm we did to him? They therefore sent a messenger to Joseph. They were scared to do it themselves, to say, in his last words to us before he died, your father gave us this message. Say this to Joseph, I ask you to forgive your brother's crime and wickedness. I know they did you harm. So now we beg you, forgive our crime, for we are the servants of your father's God. Wow. Joseph was moved to tears by their words. His brothers approached and bowed to the ground before him. There they go again. The sheaves are bowing down. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph replied, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You meant to do me harm, but God meant to bring good out of it by preserving the lives of many people, as we see today. Do not be afraid, he repeats. And you'll see that all through the Bible. There's so many references, don't be afraid, right? Remember who you are. You are a beautiful child of God. Do not be afraid, I shall provide for you and your descendants. Thus he comforted them and set their minds at rest. Today, I am centered and poised in the Christ Spirit. Nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul. That's the story of Joseph. And so it is.